Good morning. Welcome back to the Red Mike. Happy Thursday. I'm glad you're here. Today's Red Mike message: birds and Captain Morgan. What do they have in common? Well, the other day I attended a meeting in a building that I rarely visit here in Austin. Used to be a Wells Fargo building. Wells Fargo, it's important to the story, and you'll figure out why here in just a second. As I was walking in front of the building and through the front doors, I noticed that they've got these arches that resemble wagon wheels, Wells Fargo wagons. But then I noticed that on the bottom of those wagon wheel rays, the straight part where they cut it in half, they've got these little spikes, little thin. You can't see them really from the road, but when you're on the sidewalk or nearby, you can see them pretty clearly. And it doesn't take a lot of insight to figure out they put those there to keep birds off because birds like to perch. The problem is you've got them on these flat parts, but you don't have them on the angled rays. Here's where the Captain Morgan part comes in. Because they didn't put the spikes on all of the surfaces where the birds might perch, well, they're perching on, the angled parts. They just moved a few inches. And because of that, the birds are standing there sort of like Captain Morgan, one leg a little bit higher than the other one, but birds don't care. They're still up and down. So the birds moved a few inches. When they put those spikes there, they thought, oh, problem solved, except it wasn't. Birds are pretty clever. I found this out myself a few years ago. We had an issue where a couple of years in a row, we had these birds that were nesting underneath the covered area of our front porch. Now, we don't get a lot of visitors to the front door, but I don't want them to have to walk through, bird poop on the ground, or even worse, what if somebody, walked by just as a bird was doing their business. But knowing that once a nest is established, you can't do anything. It's illegal, and for good reason. You don't want to knock down a nest with eggs in it and stuff like that. So I did a little bit of research. So I thought, oh, let's play around with this a little bit. So the third year, I put a series of dangling spiky looking things, hoping that would dissuade them. And I also installed a plastic owl, figuring, oh, they're going to be afraid of this thing, right? Didn't phase them one bit. Little mud-based fence underneath the walkway. So I did more research, and one of the recommendations was, well, place some plastic sheeting there to make it slick where the mud can't stick. Well, I didn't want to do that. I mean, I don't want plastic sheeting on the underside of my porch. So I got a little inventive, and I sprayed the whole area. Again, this is well before any mud was ever placed there. So I didn't interfere with the birds actively. They weren't there yet. So I sprayed the entire area with, believe it or not, cooking spray. Just the plain, clear, regular old cooking spray. Figuring, okay, maybe it'll make it slick and they won't be able. It ended up doing the trick. The next day when I came home, I looked out on the front porch and there were a couple of plops of mud down there where clearly they had tried to put mud up there to start building their nest, and it fell down. I thought, all right, over the next several days, noticed more mud. They did not move to anywhere else underneath that overhang. So I thought, all right, mission accomplished. And even though I have not subsequently put more spray up there on other years, that 1 year of them not being able to put a nest there was enough. No more birds, no more problem. I attacked it from a different angle. I took away their options. The people at that old bank building didn't do that. And that's sometimes what happens when we attack just the most obvious part of a problem instead of the all of the aspects of the problem. Several years ago, I managed large phone banks, a couple different state agencies. And whenever call volumes would spike, the first suggestion was almost always the same. We need more people answering the phones. And sometimes that helped. But sometimes the real problem wasn't the number of agents. The real problem was a confusing form, a confusing website, not enough information, broken processes, unclear instructions, calling us when they couldn't reach their their caseworker or the person handling their particular issues, not getting them the actual help that they needed. So they were doing the next best thing. They were calling the helpline. Adding staff treated the symptom, but fixing the underlying processes, that's attacking the cause. Again, in that case, same sort of thing. The birds just moved to a different perch. I had a technology issue at a former workplace. One employee clicked the wrong thing in the wrong email, and it was a mistake that anybody could make. And yeah, my initial response was to, be mad about the click, but the click wasn't the real problem. The underlying problem that we didn't find out hit with a ransomware issue. None of our data was stolen. None of our data was compromised. We just couldn't get to it. And the real problem was that our archiving system wasn't being properly maintained and updated. So because of that, we lost weeks of data entry and small records that had to be manually re-entered into the system. One employee made the mistake, but the system allowed the mistake to become a disaster. Again, the birds just moved to a different perch. So what does all this mean? These types of issues happen in business, they happen in government, they happen in families, they happen in your own lives. We will take the most obvious, the most visible part of the problem and we'll attack that. Then we're surprised when the problem survives. There's a Facebook page. It's run by the group called Reason Magazine. They have a whole series of videos that talk about the results of unintended consequences. They're really great videos. I can't recommend them enough. So, bringing up Marcus Aurelius, like I did yesterday, he always challenged himself to look beyond appearances and identify what was actually causing an issue rather than merely reacting to what he could see. And that's harder than it sounds because symptoms are obvious, but causes often aren't. So the next time you encounter a problem, ask yourself a simple question. Am I solving the bird problem, or am I just putting spikes on one rail and hoping they don't notice the rest of the structure? Am I just moving the poop? That's today's Red Mike message. Hope you found it interesting. Hope you found it helpful. I hope you're able to use some of these things in place in your own life. And remember, look for the cause or you're going to end up with a whole lot of bird crap. Please give me a like, a follow, and a share. Drop me a comment down below. I'd appreciate it. Let your friends know. Hey, I've been listening to this guy. I like what he says. Maybe you will too. I'll see you again tomorrow. Hashtag Fun Friday. Until next time, don't forget, as always, life is short. Drink the bourbon.